Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tabor Talk. Uh, I've been saying for quite some time now that Joe Rogan is no longer the Joe Rogan we on the left used to love and appreciate. His objective, good sense. He was basically, we all thought, he's kind of like in the center there, like sort of center left, a lot of progressive values, pro choice, and many other things, right? And sure, he has some right wing things too, pro Second Amendment and, free market and all that, but it's definitely uh, has always been kind of like pro social programs. He talks about growing up on welfare and that basically saved his life, being on welfare and social programs, being basically a progressive and sympathetic to the downtrodden, if you will. So, Joe is not that person anymore. He's really just a full blown right wing reactionary. I've done videos on this, like when was the turning point, what pushed him over the edge. I believe it was COVID. When he got COVID, he did the video. CNN wrongly, I will say wrongly, said, "Hey, Joe Rogan's taking horse dewormer, ivermectin." I think that was a little unfair. I think Joe was a little too sensitive about that. The whole thing is about vaccine hesitancy. That's a whole other video. I digress. Let me get back to the point. So, but I watched every single podcast, every minute of every podcast, and he started before. He was going right wing, kind of like this. I was like, whoa, what is this? That sort of the CNN thing pushed him over the edge. So, long story short, Joe's a right wing guy. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He's kind of angry. People come after me. Like, oh no, what are you crazy? Like, he's a progressive or libertarian. That's another one. He's actually center left. He's pro choice. He's this and that. And I go, no, no, listen, you're telling me you don't see this, right? So you obviously you don't listen to the podcast on a regular basis. So anyway, people are starting to talk now. People that I follow and admire are starting to speak up. And the reason for the hesitancy is, let's face it, Joe Rogan is the most powerful media person on the internet and in the world. Let's face it. Like, he has the number one podcast. I'm not sure what the numbers are now. I think they've sort of been dropping because he's losing the left progressive side, right? Used to have both, right? But I don't know for sure. Right? But it's so, and the thing is, on a personal level, they like him. Like, he is a nice guy. He's personable. Like, even me, if I met, I'm very critical of Rogan right now. I'm sure if I met him, I'd get along with him fine. So it's a different thing about your public persona or what you feel. And then, like, okay, so Kyle Kalinske finally did a video calling out Joe, but he was a little scared. He was definitely afraid. I mean, the point is, a good chunk of Kyle's fan base, Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk, a good chunk of it are Rogan fans. There's no question about it. In fact, I found out about Kyle Kalinske from Rogan, right? Kyle Kalinske, progressive, and Young Turks and all this. Joe was just a different guy. So if Kyle goes hard, Rogan's fan base is rabid, and they will, who knows, unsubscribe, not follow you, push back. And someone like Kyle Kalinske, that's his livelihood, So me, I'm just doing this for fun. I don't get paid. I'm just, whatever. So I could speak my mind. So also, all of my guys, Hassan Piker, Hassanabi, great guy. He's been going after Joe for a while too. Obviously the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur. So here is, I'm going to play a clip. It's like a 6-minute clip in its entirety. The great David Pakman addresses this, right? So Rogan is talking about, he's basically, Rogan's a big Trumper now. He's basically this big giant, he's a mega guy, and it's disgusting. Listen to this David Pakman clip, line by line, and you'll see. Here we go.
Disappointment to see the direction that podcaster Joe Rogan is going in. I continue to say that this is not about any kind of personal beef with Joe Rogan. As you know, I've been on his show twice. If he wanted me on again, I would be back on anytime. I would present him with every one of my concerns and critiques, and I'm sure we'd have a fine discussion about it. But some of this stuff just seems not good. And the problem is, a lot of the guests just kind of go with it and foment these beliefs. Here are a couple of clips from Rogan's recent interview with Patrick Bet-David, on whose program I've also appeared. And Rogan says that the indictments of Trump are turning the country into a, quote, banana republic. This is a very disappointing direction to see Joe go in. Let's listen.
Yeah. And the people that love Trump, they feel like this is a witch hunt. And they feel like all the things he's getting indicted for are bullshit anyway. Not only does it not work, but it kind of hardens their position that he's being targeted. And that these are like the actions of a banana republic.
And remember, with all of this language, he's being targeted. There's a difference between being unfairly targeted for no reason or because people don't like you versus he has become a target because of the apparently rampant criminal wrongdoing. These are two different things.
You take your political rival and you arrest him. And specifically, you charge him with things that you're f***ing guilty of. Like the documents, like the classified documents. Biden's guilty of the exact same issue.
Of course, he's not. And listen, I've been saying since day one, investigate Joe Biden. If you find crimes, present them to a grand jury. If the grand jury says he looks like he did it, go ahead and indict Joe Biden. But there is no way to compare Joe Biden's lawyer finding a few documents and immediately contacting the authorities and cooperating completely versus a concerted and deliberate effort by Donald Trump to take documents, to keep them, to obstruct, directing lawyers to lie. There is no comparison. And Patrick Bet-David could have mentioned this to Joe Rogan if he knows it. But the environment foments this stuff from Rogan.
You gotta respect the level of deceptiveness that's been used. I mean, you look at what Hillary did, going and saying, hey, it's Russia, but it was really, what she was doing, and now they're using a similar play as well.
How much election fraud do you think is real?
Here we go, Joe. You want to go to election fraud?
Yeah, because I don't think it's zero.
No,
it's not zero. I think we could all agree it's not zero.
No way it's not zero.
And we know that these voting machines can be f***ed with.
Yeah.
And we know that there's some irregularities, all that Kerry Lake stuff in Arizona that they're trying to dismiss. It doesn't look like that's invalid. It looks like there's real fraud there.
It looks completely invalid. It looks completely invalid. And again, I don't know if Joe doesn't know. I don't know if PBD doesn't know or doesn't care to mention it. The Kerry Lake fraud claims are ridiculous. And one red flag is that she lied about it every step of the way. If you have the facts on your side, if you're Kerry Lake, and you want to argue, I actually won, not my opponent, you wouldn't have to constantly lie and say, the judge awarded us a victory today. It shows there was fraud. And then you go and it's like, the judge said that you can call a couple witnesses. That's all that happened. And then it immediately has no merit and is thrown out because it has no merit. Or all the machines were down indefinitely and nobody could vote. A few tabulators were down in one part of Arizona for a few hours. The Republican Party itself looked into it and said, we don't find the need to sue. We retract our lawsuit because it actually is not a concern, right? So it feels like there must be some real fraud. Give me a break, guys. This is just not serious. Then we get on to the economic situation. I won't even introduce one, but again, it's Joe Rogan on the U.S. economy, Trump versus Biden.
You can't beat that guy. You just can't. When that guy gets out there and he's waving to people and they're going crazy, you're not beating that. There's and the fact that he was the president for 4 years and the country was in a great economic situation, and it looked like his policies were actually effective, and that it looked like the unemployment was down, all business was building, regulations were being relaxed, more things were getting done. When you look at it from a policy perspective, if you just look at it on paper, what he did was effective.
Now, again, if you don't think this stuff through, it will rot your brain. The lowest that unemployment got under Trump was 3.5%. The lowest that it got under Biden was 3.4%. And it remained low under Biden for longer than under Trump. That's the metric he pointed to. Again, if you want to come to me and say, David, the average American is not doing well, or inequality, or all these different things, have at it. Have at it. But he cites unemployment. The unemployment numbers are better under Biden. Stock market peak, higher under Biden than Trump. Wage growth, average and peak, higher under Biden than Trump, reaching the 6s under Biden, only reached the 4s under Trump. So this is what I'm talking about. It's a lot of, it feels like sort of stuff. And I would love to go back and talk to Joe about this stuff and see what he has to say about the actual fact. Now, here's one last clip. Here's Rogan saying no one's going to beat Trump, at least not in the primary, which I agree with unless something crazy happens.
No one is going to run against Trump in the Republican side and win, because you're not going to get the Trump supporters. They are all in on Trump. Unless he has a stroke, unless something happens, it's horrible. They're all in on Trump. If you run against Trump, you're now the enemy of Trump. If I was friends with DeSantis, I'd be like, don't do it. You can't beat that guy. You just can't. When that guy gets out there and he's waving to people and they're going crazy, you're not beating that.
All right. So I basically agree with this. On this point, I believe Joe Rogan is right. On a lot of this other stuff, it's a lot of feelings and certainly not as many facts as I would like to see. It would be great if there were more voices talking to Joe recently that would maybe fact check some of this stuff in real time. I would love to see it. It doesn't have to be me. Let's see if it happens. Republicans continue